Hello, everybody. Welcome to Narrative Live. I'll never get that right. It's a Friday night. It's the after show. I know it's okay. I know the world is okay when I can't get my microphone switches correct. Tonight, we've got a great show. Got a really interesting show coming up. Here's Greg Oliar with us. How are you, Greg?
I am very well, Zev. How are you?
I'm terrific. A little over the place because my mouse isn't working, but no one really cares about those technical things. Hi, LB. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. We've got a busy show tonight. We're going to do the whole week. And there was so much news this week. I could not believe how much news was happening this week. I guess the biggest story that you just can't, well, you wouldn't even want to ignore, it's so big, is what's happening in Georgia, which is just like turning back the clock into the dark ages. LB, that's your story. And I've got a little tape to play as well from what happened last night when one of the representatives trying to enter the governor's office to witness the signing of a bill got arrested, which is kind of stunning on its own. But why don't you take us through what happened last night?
Okay. Well, Kemp got a bunch of middle-aged white dudes to surround him as he sat down with his mask on. Mr. No Masker sat with his mask on, and some of the others had their masks on, probably so that history wouldn't quite recognize them for this thing that they knew they were doing that was so corrupt, and signed into law, into Georgia law, state law, a bill that is probably the biggest voting suppression bill we've seen. It truly is Reverend Senator Warnock calls it Jim Crow 2.0, and it really is. And one of the things that people have really attached themselves to in terms of the most egregious part of it, as they should, and Joe Biden in his presser even called it sick, because it is that it makes it illegal for anyone to even offer food or water to voters standing in line. So they're trying to just, they're literally throwing out black votes. This is like, make it illegal. And the underpinning of the whole thing, so that you can get the big broad picture, is that the Georgia state legislature is now saying that if they don't like the outcome, they can change it. So it is codifying the big lie that Donald Trump told about, the election was stolen from me. And, if someone just has that feeling, even though there's no evidence, and the state legislature and the electors say, yeah, we don't like the way this all went, that they now have codified it into law that they can overturn the votes and the will of the people.
It's so blatant. It's not even attempting to.
Very blatant.
It's blatant. I mean, and firstly, the pizza thing and the water thing, I mean, that's not really going to distract anyone or detract anyone from voting. If they want to, people are going to be spending many hours in line voting, which they shouldn't. But, they'll set up the pizza place 150 feet away or 200 feet away, wherever the limitations are. That's not going to really stop anyone.
We're going to cater it.
Yeah.
We're going to show up and cater the event, right? Okay. I mean, so, and they had to have known that it would have that reaction. So I have a lot of questions around all this. While this was happening, while he was signing this very corrupt law, outside was a state representative who was actually also a member of Reverend Warnock's former congregation. And so it's an elected official, and her name is Park Cannon. Park Cannon, and all she did was knock on the door.
Yeah,
she didn't storm the Capitol. She didn't do any of this. Right? She knocked on the door, and she was immediately arrested by some goons. Here we go.
Why does she have to step back?
The governor is signing a bill that affects all Georgians. Why is he doing it in private, and why is he trying to keep elected officials who are representing us out of the process?
Exactly.
I know you don't have any control over anything other than suppressing people's right to vote and using your guns and your abilities to talk.
Yeah, you said you give her one more time, like you're going to do something.
And she knocks again. She's under arrest.
No, you are not representing.
Oh, they handcuff her.
Yeah.
Under arrest.
For what? Under arrest for what? For trying to see something that our governor is doing? Our governor is signing a bill that affects all Georgians, and you're going to arrest an elected representative. Why does the governor have more power than a representative? Why are you arresting her?
That's what I'm asking.
Stop arresting her.
Why are you arresting
Why?
her? Why are you arresting her?
Cite the violation. Cite the code. What is she in violation of? I want you to cite the code. Cite the code. Cite it. What are you? Cite the code. Cite the code. Cite the code.
Call James.
Why are you arresting her? Under what? Under what?
Back up. Get out of the way.
Under what law are you arresting her? Why are you arresting her? Why are you arresting her?
Look at them.
Tell us
Drag her
now.
out.
Why are you arresting her? Cited.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here is,
Yeah.
wow.
And
Shocking.
And I want to say it immediately got weaponized to be a whataboutism equivalent of the insurrection, right? Of like, well, she wasn't allowed to be there. She tried to intrude, and you guys had such an issue, meaning everyone who had an issue with the insurrectionists, with Donald Trump's followers just going and doing their field trip to the Capitol. And you wanted them arrested, and they're all getting arrested, so she should get arrested. Why wouldn't she get arrested? So that weaponization is already happening. I want everyone to be mindful of that. We are in a narrative war. We are in a war of optics, in a war of semantics. It's a real thing. We're fighting a propaganda machine. We have not gotten any better at fighting it, quite frankly. And so this is all getting weaponized and turned into propaganda. I'm not saying that she should not have knocked on the door because this was bound to happen. I'm saying this is now our powerful optic.
I just don't even see the
comparison. Careful in
comparison.
separating.
What's the comparison with the Capitol with the January 6th?
What's the comparison with anything? What's the comparison?
Yeah.
Bill Clinton once did something bad, and therefore Donald Trump can rape whoever the fuck he wants.
Right.
This is mad. I don't even know if I can. This is so fucking maddening. These men should be ashamed of themselves. These disgusting men should be ashamed of themselves. And I hope that they're married and they have families, and their families shame them for the rest of their fucking lives.
It is really
Forget about
horrifying.
Kemp. Kemp is a goddamn criminal. We forget because of all the shenanigans that happened in Georgia with the vote counted was accurate there for once, but Kemp cheated in the election. He was the attorney general of Georgia. He fucking cheated. He's there unlawfully, and now he's doing this shit. This law is bullshit, by the way. This is going to be overturned in 2 weeks. I have full confidence that that's going to happen. It's just like the bullshit thing in Arkansas with the anti-trans people. Fuck these people. That's all I have to. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be very coherent or articulate tonight. I'm sorry. I'm in a mood. Fuck all these people. That's really. I'm sorry. That's
right.
my commentary. There's nothing to be said. But also, can I just say, as delightful as it was for everybody to be like, we're going to cater it and this and that. That's insane. It's insane that we have to even think in those terms. We don't have to cater it. These people should be arrested long before November. End of discussion. I don't want people to go to Georgia with cake. It's a madness. This shouldn't be happening now.
Okay.
You're right.
I don't even know what to do.
You're right. You're right. I know. And I know.
Other than sip my drink, which I'm going to do now.
Sip the drink. Sip the drink. I'm going to have my ginger ale. I have
my
ginger
water.
Ale tonight.
I have water.
Okay. All right, here we go. We're all going to take a drink. Let's all take a drink. Okay.
It's that kind of week where everyone sort of needs to take a breath, right? Because it's so much going on.
It's that kind of week. And I want to talk about that because I think this is part of it being that kind of week. So here's what I suspect. Something is going on. There's no way that Kemp the criminal. Oh, that's good. I like that. Kemp the criminal Kemp.
Criminal with a K. Criminal with a K.
Criminal with a K. So the KKK Kemp.
Yep.
There's no way that he didn't know what the reaction was going to be to this, that it would be overturned, that it's going to kick up. Of course, Mark Elias is already on it. There's 3 lawsuits. It's going to stop it. It's galvanizing. Yes, it is ridiculous to show up for catering. And yes, we are probably going to end up having to do that, Greg. I'm sorry. No one's stopping these motherfuckers. No one is stopping the motherfuckers.
It's a waste of
goddamn.
It's a waste
I don't
of
know
all
what
of our
hand
creative
signal
energy.
to make. Yeah, it is. I don't mean to make the hand signal with the thing that's been weaponized too. It's ridiculous that I have to watch my hands, right? Because that's all been weaponized. But that's where we're at, everybody.
Yep.
We are still here because we didn't normalize Donald. Donald normalized the worst in us. This is all normal now.
Well,
okay? Not because the press normalized him, but because he fucking normalized our worst demons, the worst side of us, and made it okay for that motherfucker to sit there in his office and sign that bill into law, knowing it would be overturned, knowing that it was cosplay. No, everyone's just performing. You've got 3 senators down at the border, right, doing their performance art. Everything's fucking performance art now. And we're really facing really big, huge issues. So we're going to keep facing those big issues. We're going to keep fighting for those big issues. That's the job. It's demoralizing. It's having, everyone I know is having a week. Everyone I know is like at the end of their fucking ropes. And I just want to acknowledge for our audience, if you're at the end of, if you're like, I can't fucking believe this is still going on and I'm still stuck in COVID and where's my fucking check and where's the fucking vaccine? Okay, I got the vaccine. When do I go back to work? I get it. I think it's important to acknowledge this moment. Now, I was on the phone today, just before this, I'm working with some folks in Georgia, in Atlanta. And I think I also want everyone in Georgia to know, because they weren't quite sure. They were like, you guys know what happened here, right? And I said, oh yeah. Well, everybody knows. This is the biggest story out there. Because when something's so local, right? When it's so like your state, it's kind of unclear
if the rest
how
of the world can
big
hear
it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was important for them to know, yeah, we can all hear you and we're all going to be there for you. And so anyone you know in Georgia, reach out to them if you haven't been talking to them. You know, it's also important for everyone to know there. Yeah, this is a seminal case and we're watching it and we're going to fight for voting rights. And Mark Elias was out there saying a couple weeks ago that the biggest news story right now is what's happening in voter rights. It's the unbelievable, just ripping apart of voter rights like this country has not seen before. It's really happening. They're really doing it. The GOP is really doing it. They are done with democracy. They're done. They have said we're done. They're going on Fox News and saying fascism is what we're going to do now. And they're embracing it. This is an anti-democratic party in a 2-party system. And they have a tremendous amount of power, even though they are in the minority right now. And what we need to do is push them further down into the minority. 2022 is our chance to do that. If we don't do that, if they gain, I'm not even talking about keeping things equal. That's bad enough. But if they gain seats in the House or the Senate, everyone needs to understand it's fucking over.
Yeah.
We are still at this precipice of our democracy and democracy ending. And thank God Joe Biden also knows that. And we all need to stand behind him. He was at his first presser yesterday. And what did he say? He said there's anti-democratic forces in the world who they don't think democracy works anymore. And he was speaking specifically of big states, of China, of Russia. We could come back to that, Zev, right before we go to your guest, right? Of that sentiment of there are sort of global, whether they're enemies or partners, we don't really know. We have to be in the world with them, but they're attacking us. These huge, huge power centers that are opposed to our system and even our way of life really want all democracy to end. They don't think it works. They're done with it. And you know who are their allies? The Kochs, the Mercers, the Murdochs. Okay? The GOP, the entire fucking GOP that installed that motherfucking ape that we had to deal with for 4 years. They installed him. They installed him to destroy democracy because they knew where it was going. Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly were telling us 20 years ago, right? This is where Ann Coulter, this is the depths of the bowel of the fucking polyps on the colon of Satan, bore that bitch into the world for us to deal with out of this concise thought that they had real clarity on. all the way the fuck back then, that they were going to be in the minority, that white supremacists that they were going to be in the minority. And so it's been an all out effort to stop the loss of power, and to stop the loss of power, if you're falling into the minority, means you have to do away with democracy. You have to destroy it. Okay. And that's what Reverend Warnock was also saying. He said it again today. He said it from his first speech on the floor of the Senate of why to get rid of the filibuster. It's you can't have this hypocrisy where you're saying we've got to protect the minority votes in the Senate while you're throwing away the votes of minority across the nation. And they're not going to be able to sustain that for very much longer, because the minority is about to become the majority, at least when it comes to the voting public. If not already, we just can't see it because there's so much goddamn voter suppression happening. Okay, that's my rant. Those are my thoughts. There's a lot of thoughts in there. I will now back off. But
that's a good thing. Look, I think you're absolutely right. We're at the precipice of something really important. I don't think this is just normalizing things. I think this is a confrontation. This is the democratic forces and the anti-democratic forces are confronting each other. Now, I've seen this movie before. I watched this in South Africa. I know how it plays out. I've got news for the GOP and how they think it's going to play out is not what is actually going to happen. I mean, the truth of it is this isn't just a story in Georgia, and it isn't just a story in the United States. It's a story around the world, and the world is looking at Kemp and all the GOP in general, but also all the white supporters of these parties, and they're looking at them like they're prehistoric apes who are determined to push us back into the dark ages. There's no one around the world except these, ivory towers that are supporting these anti-democratic forces that really think this is a good idea. There's a majority of people around the world who have got so much invested in democracy and in the hope of democracy, and they want the United States to survive, and they want the United States to survive as a democratic country. And so they're looking at these GOP people and thinking, what the hell are these people doing? If they think any company is going to invest in Georgia, or if they think any foreign nation is going to invest in Georgia, or if they think they can hold any international event in Georgia or international sports event in Georgia, they are wrong. I'm even surprised that Coca-Cola is still in Georgia, because they're going to start seeing their sales cut around the world, because all these companies that represent that state are going to be in trouble, because the world hates this kind of behavior. No one believes that the whites are supreme, and no one believes that the white people should have control of this democratic country, except for this small group of people. And they are in a minority, and that's where they're going to stay, unless they're somehow magically able to, replicate at a greater amount than everybody else, which they're not able to do. So they are going to continue in decline, and that puts them in an awful position. What they should be doing now is realizing, well, we better figure out our future with everybody else in this country. If we feel like we're threatened, but they're not doing that. They're throwing up all the barricades. They want to destroy the country, burn everything down. That is not going to work. It doesn't work, because the numbers are against you. And if you think that China and Russia are going to come in and help you, you're sorely mistaken. They are just doing this so they can gain even more power in the world. They're not really supporting the GOP. If the GOP really thinks that Russia or Putin cares about the GOP, they are wrong. They don't care about them at all. They are just doing this to see the United States suffer. And these white people who made this country originally happen are the reason that this country is being destroyed right now. And that is a reason to be mad as hell. And we all have an obligation right now to make sure that the rest of the world hears about this, that we don't let any companies invest in Georgia, that there are boycotts, that no one buys anything made in Georgia, and that we really make that economy suffer so that Kemp and all his cronies with a K can be thrown out of power. That's my rant.
That's a good rant too.
Yeah. All right, yeah, we're on fire tonight. So
that's your best rant in a while, Zeph. That was good.
All right,
that was good.
Okay. So
there was something else I want to say in this that was so it's gone. That was connected. Okay. Sorry, that's my brain. It's gone now. I just I am for economic boycotts. This guy is facing re-election in 2022. Mm-hmm. Which is a big election for the whole country. It is. Those midterms are huge for us, everybody. And so, I don't know if Stacey Abrams is going to run again, but I feel like if she were to run again, she would. I don't know that he would be able to prevent her from winning. Now, the one thing I remember, and it's Greg. We have to get, and Zev, we have to go back into our Kavanaugh toolbox, right, and sort of see, is this, again, I ask, there's something else underneath this that I feel like we can't quite see when it comes to Kemp. What? I don't know that it's just cosplay. He knows it's not going to work. And not only is it not going to work, it's firing everybody else up again, right? We're fired up again. And last time we got all fired up, it didn't work out so well for them. So
maybe he's just it is also
it's
possible
about getting to the court. Do you think it's about getting something up to the Supreme Court to change precedent, to do something?
It could be something like that.
Something weird is going on.
That could be, but that also suggests that they really know what they're doing. It could just be they're just going to keep hammering this shit home. They're going to keep making these laws. They're going to keep passing the laws in their state houses, hoping that one of them sneaks through and doesn't get challenged. It might just be that, because all he has to do is have this be on the books in November of whenever he's up again, right? That's what he wants. So I don't think that Kemp. I don't know. He's first of all, can we just say, he has the most punchable face that I've ever seen. He really does. He looks like the villain from every bad movie. Like
violence, yes.
No, like if you were to cast him in a movie, like you're making no political violence, but if you were casting a movie where you just wanted you wanted someone to walk through the door and you immediately fucking hated him and knew he was a dick, you would put Brian Kemp in that role. That's he's
just a hypocrite. I mean, he's a hypocrite. He basically doesn't believe in any of this. He's just doing this because he sort of has to. Coke or someone else, whoever's funding his life, has told him, you've got to do this, you've got to put up a stink. And look, maybe they're just doing this to divide us, or maybe they just want to make us, every liberal in this country, so mad that, we just ignite everything even more. It's quite possible that that's what they want. They're getting it.
Maybe.
But, they're going to also get themselves voted out of power. There's no ways that something like this isn't going to galvanize everyone in Georgia to vote. I mean, it just is. And when that happens, they are outnumbered. They lose their seats. There's no ways this can work. So, maybe it's that, or maybe
I don't think they get him back. I don't think they get him back. I think some of this is they're lost. It's lost for a generation. It is terrifying, and does put us at this precipice. It's rare in history. I can't think of another time in I don't know. Hundreds of years where we've actually been in this position where, democracy, a whole system of rule is being challenged. I mean, it probably goes back to your favorite period, the Romans, right? Greg, I mean, when last did something like this really happen?
You have to remember, and to your point, the period of time that we're living in the United States, and especially in the post-World War II period, is a historical anomaly of epic proportions. Mm-hmm. That Western and Central Europe have not fought wars since 1945. The last time that happened was during the reign of, as you said, Zev, Antonius Pius in like the first century CE. Yeah. That's a long time ago. The reason it has happened is because of the programs put in place, the Marshall Plan and everything else after World War II, and NATO, and the uniting of all of the powers economically, so that they're all economically incentivized to get along, because people like that stuff. Why are you going to fight a war when you can just trade with somebody, right? So this has held for a long time. And one of the underrated things that Trump tried to fuck up was NATO and all of that alliance system. And I think it's not talked about enough. It's not written about enough, but it's historically super important, because without that, it wasn't that long ago that Germany was rolling into Belgium. They did it twice last century, and plenty of people were alive to remember the last time they did it. So, we're in a period of it's very fragile. It's very rare, and we're all really spoiled. And people our age and younger have not seen what fascism really looks like. Most of the people that saw it are either old or dead. And I think that has an effect. Now, when Sean Hannity goes on TV and says, well, Stalin must not have been so bad because he was our ally in World War II, everyone's like, yeah, he was on our side, because they can think of things only in terms of like football or like, something like that. And that's not what happened. And that's not the situation. It's much more complicated than that. Everybody tries to dumb these things down and make it like one side versus the other side. It isn't like that. Stalin killed more people in the end than Hitler did. His own people even. So these are both homicidal maniacs. And, anything can happen to tip the scales to that again. In Europe from, all the time. I mean, you look at the United States, we've had democracy pretty much uninterrupted since we declared independence. France, it was a big stop and start for a while.
Good point.
They did it. It was really good. Then Napoleon took over and changed all this stuff really fast. Then it went back here. Then it went back there. It was this big tug of war for a long time. And, interrupted by things like the German occupation and the Vichy. And, we're so spoiled in this country. We are so spoiled. And I think people really, people watching the show know this, but people at large outside of the audience, they need to understand this, how rare this is. They need to look at the history and understand. One of the things that the Republicans like to do is just pervert history and to lie about it or twist it or spin it. Like the history of the filibuster. Dinesh the Stupid says, well, no, it's not racist at all. And then Kevin Cruz has to go on Twitter and be like, actually, and do the 17, tweet thread about how every time there's a filibuster, historically, it's to prevent some sort of civil rights from happening.
Right.
So, we need to know these things. People need to know.
It's also, I mean, this is what you're speaking about is really a narrative warfare. I mean, and you spoke about it earlier, LB, and this is the hardest thing for us to realize is, we're not seeing a lot, we're not seeing dead bodies, but we're not seeing the kind of dead bodies you see in war, and you're not seeing the kind of destruction you see in war. So where's the war? Everyone keeps asking where the war is. The war is happening in our media. It's happening on social media and it's happening on TV, but it's happening in our minds ultimately. So, the reason Dinesh goes out first to put out a story about the filibuster is because he knows who goes first gets the first advantage. Whoever's out there first saying whatever it is about anything, if Donald Trump comes out there first and says, hey, they were peaceful, or if Sherwin goes on 60 Minutes and says, oh, they were eating popcorn and having hot dogs, then that gets cemented in people's minds. Now they've got a picture in their mind. They have won the advantage on the narrative warfare. Then it's up to us or everybody else to start, attacking that and breaking it down. That's a lot of work to attack that down. Sometimes, most of the time, you're able to do it, especially if you have truth on your side. But it's so much more important to be first. And, we have to start remembering that we need to own these positions right away. And, the thing that strikes me about everything that we've been through is not so much, is two things. One is that it's a group of nations, some of which we consider our friends, or at least, elements within those countries that we consider friends are supporting this. So, we sort of know that it is Russia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. We think it's China, and of course, Russia. But there are others, I have questions around, countries in Europe that might have given Donald Trump a huge loan, or, you sort of begin to question a lot of different alliances.
Yeah.
And so, who are these countries that want to end democracy, and why do they want to do it is a huge thing. And if all these countries are also participating in a narrative warfare, how are they doing it? And that's why I've written a couple of stories in the recent past about exactly that. I looked at the way China and Russia were cooperating, and recently, just today, I published a story about how Eric Prince seems to have at least tried to build a weapon of mass disinformation, really a weapon that can fuck us up on social media, for lack of a better word. So imagine there is thousands and thousands of accounts that we couldn't identify as bots, people that we might think look real, act real, that Twitter can't find, that are out there adding to the GOP fire. So if Dinesh goes out and says, yeah, the filibuster isn't racist, thousands of other different accounts that we assume are real because the bot machines can't find them, are out there helping him inflame that in our system. And it might seem like that's crazy. How could Twitter or anybody else not find that? But the truth of it is, it seems possible, at least. It seems likely. And he was doing it or trying to figure it out as early as 2015. He met with a side group from Israel. And then Greg Smith, who we know, was on our show. This is where the news broke, on our show. Greg Smith told us that he was overheard in Abu Dhabi at Eric Prince's place with 2 CIA agents there. What they were working on with Eric Prince. And what they were working on is a psyop using social media to attack Iran. They were going to use this whole idea of these multiple hidden accounts to attack Iran. And in fact, they might have done that. There seems to be indications that in 2017, they tried to do that. But what Greg said that was really striking is he said he believes that Eric Prince took that machine and targeted it at America. And, from our experience online, whenever we go online, whenever we wade out into those territories, it can get pretty unbelievable sometimes. Like, you've got the facts on your side. You're telling the truth. You've got every little bit of information possible. But somehow the narrative just gets swamped. It gets drowned by the other side, because there's this unseen machine, this invisible monolith that is crushing everything that we're trying to say by literally just outnumbering us by the number of accounts that are repeating things. So that to me is the Russians. I quoted this a while ago in one of the stories, have this thing used. It's hard to catch a black cat in a dark room, especially if the black cat isn't there. And the black cat is really disinformation, right? You think there's a black cat in the room, but maybe it's not there because you can't see it, but it's being beamed into the room. And that's what the Russians are really doing, or Russians and allies are doing, is they're beaming in a narrative into our world through television, or they're doing it through social media that is actually having a real world impact because people are believing it, but it's also amplifying all this negativity, all this terrible stuff, and it's giving it life. And so we have to find that black cat, and that's hard to do. So I mean, I can go through a whole story of how I believe this all got together, but it's just interesting from your perspectives as well. I'd love to hear how you think that has affected you as you've been trying to tell the truth for 4 years. I mean, you're among the two leading original voices that were out there trying to say, "Hey, it's Trump Russia. It's Trump Russia," and we sort of got there, but people still think it's a conspiracy theory. Some people still believe it's a conspiracy theory. And so I'd love to hear from you two how that really impacted your ability to shape the story and whether you felt this machine up against you. I'll go with you, Greg.
Well, you feel, there is a sense of gaslighting involved, and you start to doubt your own sanity, which is the point of gaslighting. I remember when the Mueller report came out, really quickly, unheralded and cock-blocked by Bill Barr, but it came out, and I was on vacation that week at a beach in New Jersey, and I'm like, well, I can't go to the beach. I got to read this. And my book had come out, and I'm like, all right, I have to at least read this quickly.
You have to read it.
I felt like I was getting the answers to the quiz back,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, nope, that's it. Yep, got that. Okay, I'm good, But that made me feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. It's not me seeing patterns that aren't there. And, another document that came and went was Volume 5 of the Senate Intelligence Report, which was much more in-depth and better than the Mueller report, I think, in terms of what actually happened.
Better, yeah.
I've been slowly going through on Prevail. Every once in a while, I'll take one character and kind of do a deep dive on some of the stuff that happened. And it's really, it all happened. I mean, it happened. You're not supposed to meet with Russians, and they were meeting with Russians a lot. Jared Kushner wanted to install a phone system in the Russian embassy so that he could talk to Moscow without the CIA or the NSA finding out about it. That happened. That was a real thing that Jared Kushner did. Yeah. He met with the president of a sanctioned bank owned by the Russian state, and there's conflicting reports about what conflicting reports out of that about what they talked about. He said he was meeting him. The White House said it was the Trump White House said it was a diplomatic meeting, but the Russians said, oh no, it was Kushner was meeting in his capacity as a businessman for his real estate thing. And it's like, okay, if he's meeting him in a personal capacity for his real estate business, that's fucking illegal because the guy's on the sanctions list, and you're not allowed by law to do business with the Russian banker oligarch jerk on the sanctions list. And if he's there working for Trump before Trump is president, then that's also against the law because it's a different, administration. So all this shit happened. And in terms of online, I block people pretty quickly. The Bernie people were much worse to me than the Trump people.
Yeah.
Always. I locked my
they
account
hated you.
once in 4 years. They
They
were digging up tweets I did in like 2008, looking for shit to report. I was like, these people are crazy.
But I mean, look how obvious it was to us, and look how the facts are there, and yet you've got people most people still don't think it's really. I still got it today. People are like, "Yeah, but you're a bit of a conspiracy theory guy, aren't you?" And I'm like, "No. These are facts. These are absolute facts. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's absolute conspiracy." And they still don't believe that Donald Trump had anything to do with the Russians. I mean, maybe a little bit, but they really think maybe it was just more that he was stupid. They don't think that he actually had any control over him. And you've been in this for so long. I mean, it's a machine, right? There's something we feel. I feel it. You're like so right. You're like, oh, now we got him, and then it never gets them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit I didn't see Bill Barr coming. That was, I was like, and I didn't see, frankly, and I think what will go down, and don't hate me, everybody, because I do love her. I love Nancy D'Alessandro from Baltimore so much. But when Pelosi decided not to pursue what came up in the Mueller report and to do investigations on that, they just sort of had a little bit of stuff. And she was like, okay, people aren't getting it. It's too complex. I think that historically we'll look back at that as one of the greatest political errors ever committed. I truly believe that. So, okay. For me, it's been a little different because I focused on organized crime, and I focused on him being a mobster, and I focused on what was happening in the world of organized crime, not just what Donald was directly connected to, but what was happening in the broader world that gripped him, and that he was a piece of property, owned piece of property. He was owned by organized crime, just as his father was. And then, the Russians came in and took over our organized crime families. They just took him. So that not only has a lot of facts with it, but it just defeated any narrative coming at me. No one called me a conspiracist for that, because there's 30, 40 years of evidence of that. Whereas, did Donald get help in the election from the Russians? And maybe there's a P-tape. And what about the Miss Universe pageant? All that shit was horseshit. And I called it horseshit at the time and was like, this is all, you guys are all chasing fucking the wrong shit, right? And you got Korn out there. It's Kornikoff, whatever we fucking call that pair, right? And they were like, it's this book. We've cracked Trump Russia. And I'm like, you idiots. So because I was there.
We're the
yeah, no, whatever. Because I was standing in that place and it was such solid ground, and there were gangsters on the record going, yeah, Donald Trump's our bitch, right? It just sort of like everybody, it just, people would come and crash up. They try to come at me, and then they would just go, and they go away. Now, so I didn't have all that. Gaslighting wasn't so hard for me. Where I also stood, because I was standing in the money, you guys. Most of what I found because I was standing in the fucking money and looking up, right? And who else was in that money were a lot of these Nazis and these mob oligarchs, right? And the Mercers and Rupert Murdoch. They were in the money. And so when I went into that end of it, and I talked about the Posobiec's and the Chuck Johnsons and the 4chan and how that evolved, and Junior and the meeting he was in with Bannon and charged by Mercer back in 2014, predating all this. That's when they came for me, and they came hard at me for that. Those are the death threats I got. That's everything was around what I was poking at, that now is something that, you can hear now mainstream journalists who were also in that group of calling me a conspiracist and a crazy person. And you sound like Q from the left if you're saying that Donald's putting out a Nazi symbol. It's like, well, I don't know what else to call 1488. I don't know what else to call that number. I mean, how come, they were also ignorant, right, of everything that was happening. And now that we've had the insurrection, everyone's an expert on extremists, right? And they're all like, oh, it's radicalization. We're being radicalized. I'm like, yeah, motherfuckers. I was saying this 4 fucking years ago. My hair was on fire trying to raise everyone's attention to this. And I couldn't, so that part of it, I think, for where we're at now, Greg and I talked about this maybe even today, or definitely this week a couple times of like, fuck, what are we supposed to do? What do you do when you're the canary in the coal mine, when you're the Cassandra and you're saying, hello, everyone. And then everyone finally wakes up to it after they've destroyed you, after they've tried to get rid of your voice because it was such a threat to whatever their knowledge base was, or they just couldn't wrap their head around it, right? And now they're all parroting everything we were saying 3 and 4 years ago. I don't know what to do with that. I got to be honest. I'm like, what do I do?
Messenger is always the first, right? The messenger is always attacked.
Yeah.
The first person who shows up on the scene, they're always attacked.
Oh, they fucking attacked us. And so it's like, well, do I just keep going forward? I think I just keep going forward, and I just keep doing this knowing we're going to get mowed down by these lazy ass. The biggest and the worst are the lazy motherfucking, cable news talking heads. Those are the worst ones. Well, Jesus, those motherfuckers are lazy and stupid. I've never seen anything so bad in my life. Maybe they're bad operatives, but I don't even want to go there. I just think they're fucking got their heads up their ass.
Well, it depends also which network.
Big,
I mean, all of them.
All of them.
Some better than others.
Everybody.
I can count 2 people I kind of enjoy watching.
Look, if we're going to be boycotting Atlanta, CNN is there. Mm-hmm. Fuck that shit. Cut that off. I'm not saying it's fake news. I'm just saying it's really engaged in this outrage machine that is the same. It's the same operation and the same machine that you're talking about, right? Yeah. They're so fucking addicted to it. They're so engaged in it. They're getting, I think, probably a lot of pressure, right? And I kind of want to, if anything, if I'm going to be a canary in this moment, if I'm going to be a sort of, hey, it's letting them know, look, you're going to lose people, because that moment of Donald's presidency, that was such a media ratings bonanza, not because he was some kind of media ratings bonanza, but because the moment was such a moment of threat. And so everybody engaged in it because it was so clearly, fuck, they're going to fucking kill us and they're going to kill our democracy. This is when we all do engage. It wasn't because he was a personality and you have to find another personality, or, it's because we were rightly afraid and concerned and on alert, heavy duty alert for what was happening to us. So it's okay to keep the ratings there, to keep everything there, dialed up to 25, as if that's the new norm. It is going to destroy us. Mm-hmm. It will destroy us.
It's the black cat. That is the black cat.
It's the black cat.
And so I actually think the cut the code thing is absolutely right. I think, we had a domestic terrorist attack on us on January the 6th. We all think it's domestic terrorism. The FBI thinks it's domestic terrorism. So anyone who supports domestic terrorism shouldn't have access to every home in America. Everyone who supports domestic terrorism should not have access to everyone's phones in North America. They should be banned. This is what happens everywhere else in the world when you have terrorist organizations. They're labeled terrorist organizations, and they get banned from spreading their hateful message. And so there are legitimate news organizations, of course, but when you get to the Newsmaxes and you get to the OANs and to Fox News, frankly, and to Facebook and to Twitter, even though we're on it right now, and Parler, you name it. Like, you're either gonna, you gotta say you're either for democracy or you're against democracy. If you're against democracy, you don't actually fit here. You're not allowed here because we consider that a terrorist organization, because that's not our constitution. And the last time you guys went rampant all over our capital and tried to destroy our democracy, that's why we don't like that. And so we're banning it. We're just not going to have that part of our society. I know it's so not American because everyone needs to have the First Amendment, but we don't actually have a right to say everything. We only have a right to say things that are not going to cause hurt or harm to other people. Never mind hurt or harm to our own constitution and country. It's perfectly okay to say, hey, GOP, no, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to support authoritarian causes. And you can't have TV networks that go out there and say that democracy should be destroyed or that coronavirus doesn't exist or whatever. You're not allowed to do those things. It's harmful to our democracy. I honestly think that, that is the black cat. The black cat is these media organizations and these social media organizations. That's how they're projecting all of this onto America. If you ban that, you get rid of the cat. They have nothing to project to it.
Well, the lights come on.
I want to say,
yeah.
I want to say, I got to say two things real quick, and then are we going to bring the guest on?
Bring Tracy.
We're going to bring Tracy on, okay? Because she's been waiting patiently.
I know she has been.
First of all, LB had sources and new stuff early on, and I did not. I was just trying to figure this all out on my own without any sources and stuff. So it's not the same as different. And I don't think it's accurate for me to claim to be in the know way back when, because I was not. I suspected things, I figured things out, but I didn't know.
But that figuring things out is actually what needed to happen. I think that's...
I disagree.
My understanding is the other thing I'm going to say is that this is true, okay? I have terrible vision. I can't see shit without my glasses, but at night, when I wake up and I go to the bathroom in the dark and I don't have my glasses on, I can see the black cat just fine. I really can. Not joking.
Wow.
All right. Okay. That's fantastic. I love that. We'll talk more about that.
Your vision. Superhero
but
power.
I will say, Greg, putting those pieces together is what was missing in the mainstream media. So all that connection of open source stuff overlapping and figuring it out, that is what was missing in the original reporting. So you can't quite
that's right.
disclaim that. You can't be
I'll take credit. That I can do.
Yeah,
that I did. But I didn't have I'm just pulling other things in.
And by the way, so much of what I did was figuring it out with people like you. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Hey. Hey, how are you?
We need it.
We'll be 1 second.
Good. Let me just say this one thing. We didn't want to leave you waiting anymore. We did this thing where if Greg hadn't found what he found and kind of came to the questions, it wasn't even conclusions. It was sort of like, oh my God, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? What about this? Then my brain wouldn't have gone where it went, right? And same for Zev. So it was this collective brain. I mean, it really was. And we were really open to one another, and we were open to being wrong. And we just were finding our way in the dark. So you came to what you came to through a process, and we'll talk about this. Will come out in some of the stuff that I'm working on right now. But there was a process of analysis of the sort of decoding what all this information was that you came to actually in a pretty profound way, Greg. And so I don't want to discount that and sort of say, well, if you had people who knew, because you know what, the people who knew, they didn't fucking know.
Even they
knew some stuff, but they were like, we had to figure it out.
If you don't take we have to stake this territory because it's important. It's important work that everyone did, and we would not even be close to where we are now. We'd probably be in a second Trump term if it weren't for the work that you guys did and so many others did in figuring all of this out. So we can thank ourselves for not being there. Tracy, it's nice to have you on the show. Tracy, we met the other day. I saw this article, op-ed you wrote in the LA Times. Was it the LA Times?
Yeah.
Los
Angeles Times.
I should have it out here.
Yep.
And you really struck a chord with me because why don't you tell us what the article was about? It had to do with the attacks on the Asian owned massage parlors in Atlanta, where the gunman, I can't remember the number 9. I shouldn't remember it, but I don't remember. I think it was 8 people that died. 6 of them were of Asian American origin. But you came up, you raised a really important issue, which was that this wasn't so much. It might have been perhaps an attack on Asian Americans, but it was about sex workers, and that was being ignored. So Tracy wrote these 2 great novels. One of them is called, you're going to have to tell us the name. Diary of a Manhattan Call Girl. Thank you. I normally have things ready, but I don't. So tell us about you. There you go.
And actually, it's 3 novels: Diary of a Married Call Girl and Diary of a Jet-Setting Call Girl. And actually, this is really relevant to what you guys have been talking about, this whole question of democracy. Sex workers for many years, since the early 1970s, have been organizing because we could see that democracy is incomplete without us. And, you know, the novels are entertaining, but they're also about one sex worker who is struggling with those issues. She has friends who are rabid activists, and she has friends who are conservative sex workers, don't want to organize. So these culture wars that you guys have been talking about, these tensions also exist in the sex industry. They probably existed in those massage spas that were attacked. You know, we don't know about it now because many of them are dead. But there are culture wars inside of the sex industry, political tendencies and disagreements. And so I find this whole discussion really interesting.
But your initial thoughts are coming when you heard about the attack, and you heard that there was these were massage parlors. Everyone's initial reaction was to say, well, it's a hate crime against Asian Americans, it may not have been. We think the evidence suggests that it probably wasn't completely that it was first and foremost a reaction to sex addiction.
And well, something that they're sex addiction, which is really a kind of medicalization of Christian morality. It's a thing that's been invented by, it's kind of a snake oil thing, right? And there's a certain type of organized Christianity that really pushes that idea. They even have addiction centers. Addiction recovery centers, and this guy did spend a lot of time there. So, you know, whether we really believe that sex addiction is a real thing or not, that's another question, but he probably really believed it. Because of what's happening in Georgia, it's very easy to buy into the idea that everything there is racial, but this is a situation where it's more complex, and, you know, the problems facing, you know, young indoctrinated Christians around sexuality, those problems are bigger than race, because actually not everybody who has those problems is white. I wonder why the Asian American Journalists Association is saying we should stay away from sexualizing the story. They want to racialize the story, and I wonder if I don't know, but I question that whole tactic. Like, is it because some of the members of the Asian American Journalists Association are themselves still caught up in Christian indoctrination? I have a question about that. I'm not accusing them. I'm just asking.
So your concern is with the association is that they are themselves pursuing a sort of a Christian agenda.
Well, I don't want to accuse them of that, but I'm asking because they created guidance saying that the media should avoid anything that quote unquote hypersexualizes Asian women. That language, as well intentioned as it sounds, actually to a sex worker just sounds like, oh, you're really hung up about sex workers and you don't really want to think about the fact that we exist.
I see.
But you know, every immigrant group that has ever come to the United States has engaged in sex work, especially in the first phase of existing here. You know, a lot of people would be very surprised to think about Jewish immigrants being in the sex industry because, well, we just don't hear about it anymore. You know, we think we have different stereotypes about Jewish communities, but it used to be that the stereotype was actually involving sex work. So I believe there is some kind of shame about sex work in, you know, areas where some of these journalists grew up. And I think they may be doing more harm than they realize to, well, sex workers who happen to be of Asian descent, you know.
So your ultimate concern was to make sure that we recognize that these were sex workers at the end of the day, and that this was a hate crime against sex workers, and that there is a lot of hatred against and a lot of crime against sex workers, that sort of gets swept under the carpet because of the initial inclinations.
Right, but I want to make another thing clear, which is that we don't know for sure whether the people who died were engaged in sex work. What happens is, sex work there's a lot of service and support work around sex work. So we just don't know. There may have been people who were cooks or cleaners or managers, administration. That's what it sounds like in these spas. They may or may not have been engaged in sex work. The whole point of the massage business is to make it sort of pastel and hard to really know what's happening. So that has actually worked because we don't know for sure. And I would say that's okay. We don't have to know everybody's business. But the people who died certainly died because of a deep hatred and prejudice that this guy was trained to act on. He had a problem with commercial sex, with pornography. He believed he was a sex addict. And he believed that sex workers were to blame. I mean, he definitely saw that as, what he was up to.
But to then go and kill people, it seems outrageous. When the problem is really your own. What makes that happen? Of course, it's not for us to answer, but it's tricky to understand how that could trigger a mass murder like that.
Well, I just want to say there's a lot of propaganda against the sex industry from people claiming to be anti-trafficking, right? So the Polaris Project, they have blood on their hands, the stuff that they've been spewing for years on their website, targeting, claiming that you should go around as a vigilante and do something about the Asian massage business. So, yeah, I mean, this kid was propagandized. He definitely, and he obviously wasn't that bright.
Tracy, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us on Narativ, and we'll hopefully get you back soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tracy.
It's an interesting take that she has because, I feel like we jump to conclusions so much in our world that we're sort of like, it's so easy to go to the initial gut instinct of, well, if the victims were Asian, it was a hate crime against Asians related to coronavirus. If it's a Muslim person or a person who practices Islam, as it was in Boulder, Colorado, the initial instincts were, well, he's white, he looks white, so we'll just declare him a white supremacist. And then later on, we found out he was a person who not that it makes a difference, he could still be a white supremacist, but someone who was a Muslim. And so there is this tendency amongst us all to sort of go to that initial instinct. And it's part of the thing that happens maybe it's another part of narrative warfare is, an event happens, there's a jump ball to claim that first position where we ultimately set the assumption that everyone then follows with. If that makes any sense.
I think it does. I think there's certain things that for me, I've learned from my own mistake that I made to wait. And so for me, again, to pull this back around to all of the sort of when I get under fire with the gaslighting, the other thing that was going on for me when I was seeing, the American Nazis, I just call them that, anti-democratic fascists, white supremacists, white nationalists, that tried to brand themselves alt-right in a cute way, that I found them in the money. I did. But I also was looking at the radicalization of young white men in gaming forums and whatnot. It took me there very quickly to sort of see, okay, well, what's going on here? Because that's where some of these operatives were working in, and that's where they were radicalizing. They were radicalizing in the forums, before we got to even Gab, right? Before even Gab existed, which I don't even know if Gab's around anymore. I had to disengage from all that, but for my own brain. But it was 4chan, it was 8chan, it was Reddit, it was all the online multiplayer game universe, right? Where you had all these chat rooms and this stuff happening. And it was even children's games, right? Roblox, all of that. We had a lot of radicalization happening. What I saw in there that I see here with this. So I always I didn't chime in. If you guys don't see me chiming in right away on some big event, especially a mass shooter, it's because I know to fucking wait. I don't know that I even believe this motherfucker, right? This guy, this shooter, in terms of what he says his motive was or what happened with him. We need to still wait on that. We need to see what actually was happening in his social media. That will tell us a lot. And then that needs to come forward. And I'll say that we're still waiting on the Vegas shooter, on information on that guy, right? That got shut down so fast in terms of us getting any more information out of it. And there was all this stuff that was going to happen in Vegas. We're going to learn about this guy. We're going to learn about, what was going on in the Philippines with him and where his money was coming from. We got some of that, but we didn't get a full picture. And that kind of thing tells me, holy shit, there's something really big underneath this. And we just need to wait and get that information. Because my initial reaction was like, this is not an Asian hate crime. This is a guy going out and killing women, right? He's blaming women. He's blaming women for his problem. And that's what, that is the connective tissue, whether it's hate, whether it's gender, whether it's just mass shooter, it's the other rising of your own problems. Whatever the internal struggle is that these young men are having, they displace it on someone else and blame the other person for causing them to be the way they are. And so the solution that they are radicalized to go and pursue and solve for themselves is to just take out that thing that's causing them the problem. So that's how I saw that. That was my first take, but I'm still waiting. I don't know. We don't know about this guy. I'm sorry. We don't know who he is. We don't know. We really don't know. We need more information. That's it.
We don't know much about it. Greg. Sorry.
It's part of a larger problem. And I feel like we have to keep bringing this up every so often because, we had, was it last year was Black Lives Matter? I've lost all sense of time.
Last year was Black Lives Matter, yeah.
We've had an awakening in the country to some degree about institutionalized racism, right? I think many more people are now aware of it than had been for a variety of mostly awful reasons. But I think people's awareness is high. Institutionalized sexism and misogyny is also a big problem in this country, and frankly, in every country. Okay, and there is no movement about that. And this guy going in and shooting up the sex workers, I don't mean to minimize it. Obviously, people are doing things, but there's not this. It's much more. It's so baked into the mores of society that it's hard for people to see a lot. This guy going in there, sex workers are an example. Most sex workers are women. How many sex workers get arrested relative to the men who hire them getting arrested? How does that break down? It's much more the sex workers that get arrested. And stuff just keeps happening. There's just these horrible today. The Minnesota, is it Minnesota, the state Supreme Court? Is that where it was?
Oh, they ruled I saw that.
It's so hard to get a rape conviction anyway. What is it, like 2%? Is it even that high?
No,
they finally got one, and these fuckers overturned it because she was drunk and they didn't get her. Come on. I mean, this is a problem. So I just feel like everyone...
all these divisions, we've got so many, they're so heightened by, again, I don't need to be going back to this point, but it's a good theme for tonight, is there is a machine out there that's forcing us into conflict. And we saw it in 2016. We actually saw the evidence coming out of Russia, where we saw them trying to ignite Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter. They were doing it on purpose. They were having these meetings they arranged in Facebook groups. They were having, which were organized out of Russia, but were real meetings. We saw just in Facebook on January the 6th, so many of the people who were involved in the insurrection, including the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, organized themselves on Facebook. So the system we've built, which is projecting into our country, is creating these opportunities for conflict. It's designed to create conflict. When Zuckerberg was in front of the hearing yesterday, I don't know if you heard that. I mean, they don't think it's a problem that they are radicalizing people for money. They feel like, we don't want to be doing that, but they don't stop doing it because they want the engagement, and the more engagement they get, the more radicalization we get. And so they're not upset about this, but the effects that we're seeing in the country, what we're seeing in terms of conflict, in terms of polarization, is unbelievable. There's not shootings like this that take place anywhere else in the world. Why is it happening in America? It's because you could say the guns are a big issue, but there are guns in a lot of places. So what's happening to create this environment that's so pressurized that people snap in the way that they've been doing. I'm using that as an excuse, but
that's a whole other show.
Yeah, it is a whole other show.
That's a whole other show.
Then I have to go into my whole Michael Moore is an idiot thing, and we don't want to do that.
And he is. We'll agree.
I want to say what you were saying before, Zev, about how they drive the wedge issues.
Yeah.
Misogyny is a wedge issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Hillary, one of the reasons Hillary Clinton lost is because she's a woman, and they hammer her. Now, in researching the Kavanaugh pieces, I stumbled upon Mark Judge's blog post or whatever the hell he's been writing lately. This is the guy who's buddies with Kavanaugh that was, in the room when they sexually assaulted Dr. Ford. Mark Judge, great guy. My friend is in trouble. I'm going to run to the beach house. And you can tell in what he's writing now.
They hit him.
They hate Kamala Harris so much. That's who they're after now. They're lobbing at Biden, but the long view, they're getting there ready. All of the forces are going at her.
Absolutely.
So, and we have to be prepared for that too, because she's going to be the next person, whether it's in 4 years or 8, she's coming. We have to be ready to, help point out the bullshit and protect her so she can, save the country and stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Hey, are we out of time? We're sort of out of time, and we can keep going. I've got nothing to do if you guys want to keep yakking. Do you want
me to answer your gun question real quick?
You could do the gun question, but I also want you to get to Putin as well. But let's do the gun question.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Let's get to Putin. No, I want to get to Putin. I don't care about the guns are never going away. We'll be able to come back to the guns any day of the week.
We'll do guns another day. So
let's talk about Putin.
Let's talk about this man. Look at him. And what's he wearing?
He's going
He's going
to a furry convention. Look at him. Oh my god, that's it. Oh my god, it's Pokemon Go. Get him. Oh, what do you know?
I mean, seriously.
When you win a booty, he looks so cute. Oh, it's your little booty doll.
Oh my god, this is his vacation. He's
the big tough leader of all the Russians.
I was trying to soften his image in because of Navalny, so they literally are putting him in soft.
I think they're trying to make him look macho.
Oh, because that is not working.
He's trying to look macho. He's lost it. This is something that's happened here. Okay, Trump is out. This dumbass guy. Look at his little sippy cup. Is there juicy juice in there? Oh, is it warm milk for Pootie? Oh. Poor little.
He went on vacation with his defense secretary. Hey, defense. I was like, why did you take
always with a guy?
Why do you need the chief of staff of your general of your army to go with you on vacation? Can you imagine getting that assignment? You must be like, oh gosh, got to go with the boss on vacation to Siberia to wear furry clothing. I mean, they are trying to make it look macho because look at this one. This one, he's got a big car. He likes his big cars.
This is the Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos, but in Russia.
It is,
right? Yeah,
it is.
That's totally.
I don't know what happened in that
Paulie
episode.
and Christopher.
Totally.
That's what it is. But Putin had a bad week because Biden basically doubled down and said, "Yeah, he's a killer," and Putin went fucking apeshit on Russian TV.
He did.
Biden just ignored him. He just gray rocked this fucking guy.
This is the screen grabs. I love this. Julia Davis put this out. It's incredible. Yeah. It's the screen grabs of him trying to communicate how he feels about.
He's so mad, and then he's like, "I will debate Putin. I will debate Biden." And it's like, "Fuck you! Nobody's debating you, you little twerp. Get the fuck out of here. Go back to St. Petersburg, man."
He's really just not having a good time. I mean, he's
but I think he's on. I think he's on the way out. I really do. This is pathetic.
Yeah.
They just let him be the leader until 2036. 2136.
Look, I still think this man has very dangerous men behind him. They've always been behind him. They were more powerful than him at the time. And honestly, they could choose to be more powerful than him again. Now, they're very scary. So if it's his backers that oust him, I'm very nervous about who they would stick in there. And it should be said right now, we can laugh at this troll. I've called him a troll from day one. Never forget also that in the Oliver Stone, masturbatory fest that Oliver Stone goes and has with Putin because they love each other so much.
Hagiography.
Yeah.
Hagiography is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Look at his face. Look at his face. Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
but
sorry.
never forget that Oliver Stone that Putin's showing Oliver Stone like this is what our military does, and honestly, I think he really did believe it. But he was showing him video game footage,
Right?
And
right.
Oliver Stone didn't know any better. I don't think Putin knew any better. I'm telling you, this guy is not this. He's a very evil man. He's a very dangerous man. He's up to no good all over the place. He's responsible for mass death all over the place, right? It's horrible. He did put bounties and he does, God only knows what, the horribleness in Syria, all of it is terrible. And guys, he is straight out of 4chan. Like he is a troll.
It's all stagecraft. It's all stagecraft. This is why you do this. This is why you take this shot.
This is not a smart guy. And if you're in the Kremlin and they stick you in Dresden, right? If you're in the KGB and they stick you in Dresden, which is where they put him, you're not, it's not so good for you, right? And everything that you got, right? And there was a big report that our intelligence agencies had some, I think it was out of Stanford on him. And like right around the time that, he was really hating Hillary Clinton at this moment. She was Secretary of State. And they say, because they were like reading his body language, meaning they said, well, he's got kind of a lizard. He's in his reptilian brain, right? Mm-hmm. And he got diagnosed from his body language because he used to walk around like an ape, right? Like you could see him in this, when he's a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. And then it was early days of then FSB, had the FSB, and then early days, there's footage of him. And he's very awkward and very strange and very unaware of his body. And that report came out on him because they studied him through his body and his movements and came to a conclusion, fair or not, they came to a conclusion. And ever since then, it's like he went away and by his facial structure, he started getting fillers. Yeah. he's so fucking fragile and insecure. Like he started literally plumping up his cheeks. I really think that bothered him. I think that got under his skin like nothing else. And then he has to have these long shots of him walking down the Kremlin in inner halls, right? And it's these big long where he's marching and he's like worked on his walk. He's like actually practiced walking so that he can look big and tough and strong. It's like, oh, you can't handle that. They said, yeah, you're an awkward guy. You're a reptilian brain guy. Yeah. You're somewhere on the spectrum somewhere. Plus, also probably unrelated, a psychopath who likes to kill small animals and has a file that you rape little boys, and that's what Alexander Litvinenko said. That file existed in the FSB, and they knew that he was a pedophile, right? So all of a sudden, these reports start coming out about him, and he starts freaking out and changing himself, right? And this is part of that. This is his like. Look
how small he is. I mean, he must be.
Look at me.
How tall is the guy? Big. Like 5'5"? Because that's not very deep.
I think he's shorter.
Deep.
I think he's shorter.
So he's like, he's like a tiny little guy.
I'm fine with short men. It's not that, but
short men like big vehicles.
Like Donald Trump had to walk like this next to him in Helsinki to try to not be taller than him, right? Because he's so fucking fragile, this guy. He's so fragile. So I think that, the thing is, and why Navalny coming back was such a blow to him, is anything that hits at his sort of strongman image and reveals it to be the ridiculous thing it is. Like, Joe Biden saying, yeah, he's a killer. I'm not debating him. Fuck him. Right? Yeah. Like, not that Joe Biden said all that, but he did call him a killer. That he gets freaked out because it's like, wait a minute. No. That's interrupting with this image, which I think is all he's invested in. He's only invested in this image because it bothers him so much that people actually know who and what he really is. And he just can't get past that. He really does belong. If we were to resurrect 4chan for what it was, he really does belong there. Like he probably came up with Pepe the Frog. That's probably from him. Like
he must have been so annoyed, hey, when Biden didn't respond. He must have really freaked out. He must have been like, I'm throwing some of the gauntlet down. Come on, back at me, and there's nothing.
He's an awkward guy. He's a really awkward, socially awkward guy. He really is, and he's got a lot of pain, I think, associated with that. Not that I care about him, and I'm not trying to make him empathetic. I just think this guy is the image, even that he was like, it's a KGB agent. watch out. He knows how to manipulate. He's fucking 5'4". He's got a fragile ego. He dresses up in his costumes. He always has to have a guy with him that's dressed just like him. He does fake fucking judo. And even when he's going on a hockey rink, he trips on the carpet, right? Like he's a
wizard. He's not that he's able to do that, but he's, once you take the black cats away, there's nothing left. That's my theory.
That's my thing. Now, that being said, Navalny really is, there's reports coming out this week that he is truly being tortured. And I'm really worried about him.
It doesn't look like his health he's doing well at all. And there was a report of a post that apparently came from him that said that he had a sordid back and that no one wants to get injured in prison because you don't get looked after, I think was the general sentiment. And that I think may be true. I think he might be getting tortured. I think his life is really at risk, which is not surprising because they tried to kill him the first time, so
right.
It would be a tragedy for Russia if anything happened to Navalny, but also a tragedy for Putin because, the world is going to isolate this man in such a way if anything happens to Navalny. And I think the world has to be vocal about this. Every world leader needs to warn him that if he does this, if anything happens to Navalny, it's on him. It's on Russia.
Nothing more needs to happen to Navalny for us for everyone to have all that they need about this man to isolate him, to really cut him the fuck off. Yeah. And to cut him off means to take the money from his motherfucking oligarchs. Take their goddamn money.
And his money. He's got a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. He's got half of it. He's got half of all their money. Just take it.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. All right. Well, now we can wrap it up. That was a fun show. Thank you very much. We had a good time. We'll be back on Tuesday on Narativ. Until that time, have yourself a great weekend. And thanks for joining us tonight. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Sev.
Thanks, Sev. Thanks, everyone.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com